All right, welcome everyone to today's session where we are looking at understanding the differences in your SMSF pension documents. I must admit, it's one of the most common questions that I get asked from a technical point of view, in particular when we're speaking to firms about membership and why you might use a document over a different document. So what we have been doing in recent times is we've been making adjustments to our own SMSF pension documents, already very comprehensive and highly used in the industry. But as is the way, when you start to talk to your clients, being you, our members, we start to get other things that we need to contemplate. And what we have been working on in recent times is, of course, some changes or some updates to reflect those conversations that we've been having. Therefore, the reason why I wanted to go through today as a subject was to then start to identify why you might go down the path of documents such as what Smarter SMSF has when compared to what you might be currently doing. And I'm going to kick off today with a question for you. So the poll is, how do you actually currently prepare pension documents for your SMSF clients? So are you relying upon your SMSF software, whether that's BGL, Class, Supermate, or some other platform? Do you actually use a document provider, such as Smarter SMSF? Do you actually spend time creating your own templates? So going through a process of trying to manage that with the SMSF deed and whatever other rationale you may have, or is there some other circumstance? So we'll give this another 30 seconds or so just to get some further information and feedback from you. There is one very clear leader in here, which is not surprising at all, and therefore the context of the topic that we're also going to be talking about today. So 10 seconds, and then I'll quickly share with you some of the feedback of those results as well. All right. So unsurprisingly, what we do see is around 71% of respondents here relying on their SMSF software to be able to build out the pension commencement documents. So what I want to do with you today in this hour that we have is to go through and share with you like where we are today in the state of play with documents and what are some of the differences that you need to be aware of strategically from a risk point of view and so forth. And this is why I ended up putting this webinar together, because I wanted to highlight what some of these differences might be that may influence the decision on how you go about preparing those documents in the future. So let's just go back and have a little bit of a understanding on the state of play with documents, because typically there has been an historical gap in the provision of compliance documents, and also when we talk about pensions as well, and the various stages, of course, that we now have from transition to retirement through to account-based pensions in retirement phase, and of course, death benefit pensions. We also know that documentation is certainly being heightened in its approach. So from a legal point of view, compliance risk, and we've seen that continually demonstrated in particular through the use of binding death benefit nominations. There's also quite clearly a much more heightened expectation from regulators and auditors on the documents that are required to support the relevant decisions that are made, whether it's commencing it or it's in respect to the ongoing operation of that income stream as well. There is, as we clearly saw from the survey, a heavy reliance upon the software provider to support the practitioner with templates. Reality is, though, is the regard that they have to the alignment of your fund's governing rules, there is given virtually no consideration to that. So therefore, what risk does that potentially pose? And the alternative here, which isn't necessarily a significant number, but there is sort of 15% in here, we also see then firms going through a process of creating their own internal templates because of that historical gap that we see at the very beginning here, but also the fact that they want to rely upon or link to the fund's governing deed. So recognizing already that there is a disconnect between the SMSF software documents, but looking to build a solution internally themselves. So it might not be a technical issue But the practice-based issue becomes really critical there, because it's more about how do we do something efficiently and effectively and repetitively inside your practice. So here's the question that I want to pose to you. So we currently prepare documents. This is a common one that we have. We currently prepare documents for our clients from within our SMSF software. It's a more efficient way to complete it, because obviously you can set that pension up and then simply hit some buttons to generate the templates. But the more I read on the topic, the more I'm starting to question whether this is the right approach we should be taking for our clients. So what we're going to go through today are some of the potential gaps that you will see that may highlight different risks or issues in the approach that you may be taking today. Okay, so that's as far as I want to kind of take it here, to raise these issues with you and show you how in our Smarter SMSF pension commencement form, we help overcome some of those issues and also introduce some of the strategic considerations as well. So what are the potential gaps? So the first thing here, I would say, and this has got no real relevance to Smarter SMSF generally, but be acutely aware of the documentation that is being prepared when it comes from your software, which in a lot of instances, as you will see on the right-hand side here, just a couple of screenshots, these are all produced by virtue of minutes or resolutions. So I ask you in the first instance, is you are relying on an assumption here that minutes or resolutions are relevant and an accepted form of documentation to be able to start that income stream. So again, most critical here, the software provider is really focusing on the fact that we're having an evidentiary trail to say that the pension's commencing. But there are deeds out in the marketplace that will require that to be done by an agreement. Therefore, these documents itself may not be appropriate in any way, shape, or form to accept that that pension has actually commenced. So that's one critical thing there. So when we look at some of the issues and considerations around those documents more broadly, we need to go and understand, well, what does the commissioner give us guidance on around when a pension commences? And we look to the fact that TR 2013/5 talks about must be determined by reference to the terms and conditions of that income stream agreed to by the trustee and member and the rules set out in the governing rules. So we need to combine those two things together. Sure, we can have a series of application by the member and a trustee minute and then a notification that might talk about the agreed terms between the trustee and member, but does it align itself to the governing rules? So 25.1 is inside the Smarter SMSF deed, and we talk about the fact that there's the ability to start that income stream, and it may be paid by the trustee at the member's request, the trustee and the trustee's discretion if authorized to do so. So yes, sure, you could potentially utilize a set of resolutions or minutes as long as they naturally comply with some of the other requirements there around member acceptance and trustee acceptance, which is a critical piece to that, but it's not always the same. And what we also see quite commonly is this circular referencing that goes on. And what I mean by that is that the deed itself is generally quite loose in terms of the application of the powers to be able to pay the pension. So there's not a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to the deed, and that ensures that it can be paid in accordance with the laws, but procedurally, you therefore are relying more upon the pension documents to be able to support back and reference the different things that would need to apply to ensure that that pension is on foot. And what we do end up with then is a range of circular arguments, like I said at the very beginning, because we potentially have fairly light on pension documents that reference that it needs to be paid in accordance with the deed. But if the deed doesn't really tell us the procedural implications of that, then where are we actually getting the instructions in respect to the payment of that pension and the rules that really govern the payment of that pension? And we'll go through in the templates later why some of that stuff is critically important and why our documents in pension documents, I guess, have a lot more depth to them, very much because of the fact, the way in which the powers inside the trustee are drafted. So how then does the deed define how the agreement applies? So again, we're going back to deed, resolution, or other mechanism, as we spoke about before. And the critical element here is it must be two-way. So it must be consensual, a contractual agreement between the member and the trustee. And that becomes really important when we may want to look at doing other things in the future to be able to potentially change the terms of that agreement as well. And the way in which we sort of encapsulate that is around becoming a special rule of the fund. And again, we'll talk about that a bit later on. So if using standard SMSF software pension documents here, have you therefore reviewed that against the deed to ensure that you're not posing any risks to the operation of that potential income stream? So critical first thing there. The next one is pension PDSs. So this is something whereby, again, we don't see these produced out of the SMSF software, and the Corporations Act requires a PDS to be issued when a member converts from accumulation phase to pension phase. Now, in a lot of instances, we see a reliance on this limited exception. And what that exception talks about, that if it is on reasonable grounds to believe that the member has received or has and knows they have access to all the information that that PDS would contain, then there would be no obligation to issue that. Now, when you look at most document providers, whether it's setting up new funds, issuing pension documents, you will always see a PDS. And the risk here and the reason why is ultimately, if the PDS is not issued, you have made the decision. I'm talking about you, the practitioner here. You have made the decision for the client by not issuing the PDS with the pension commencement documents. So you're now made the assumption that the client understands as the member that they know all the things to understand the way in which that income stream has been prepared. So you have made that decision for them not to issue the PDS. So again, the software does not provide this. All of the document providers pretty much in the marketplace do so. So again, I would suggest that you'd be giving consideration to the incorporation of a product disclosure statement in that regard. So what does the PDS actually provide? Well, it talks about the type and term of the pension, the admin, tax, legal, actuarial considerations in establishing and running that, advantages, disadvantages, commutation, reversionary status, estate planning implications. So a broad range of things to inform the individual in respect to the way in which that product will operate for them. So when we get to starting the pension then, this is where it becomes quite interesting, because what if, and this is very common, the pension is to start on the 1st of July, but the financial statements clearly can't be completed at that point in time. So when we look at the fact that you might be finishing them today, you might be finishing them in November, you might be finishing them in February next year, and the fact that we now have transfer balance account reporting, of course, we may have a 28 October due date, we may be annual for now, but we have no recognition within our SMSF software documentation of the member's intent to start at an earlier stage, which therefore presents potential issues of backdating of documents. So one of the things that I wanted to share today, and really was a catalyst to a lot of the discussion here, is now introducing, I guess, multiple concepts in the way in which the pension documents can be created. So we had one of our members ring us a few months ago, and we were talking about the fact that they had an individual member was about to start, or they'd intended on starting the pension at the 1st of July. So there was actually a discussion that had taken place. Not long after they had actually, in essence, had that conversation about the intent, there was an email, in essence, between the parties with the administrator or the accountant and the client. They're looking to do all that stuff, that they then A, lost capacity, and B, subsequently died. So what, even from the context of our pension documentation, which we use in the context of an oral request confirming the original decision that was made to commence the pension, there was a natural gap in the way in which our documents were being prepared as well, which now results in, I guess, a combination of ways in which we are helping you to address these type of issues. And again, this is something you won't naturally see within your SMSF software. So yes, sure, you'll be able to continue to order documents at a later point in time, confirm an initial oral request, so that when those documents are created, you'll be creating them and having them signed today, confirming the decision to have started that pension on the 1st of July. But if you want to now, you'll be able to do multiple steps. First, you'll be able to set up that initial request. That may be prior to the 1st of July to start on the 1st of July. The fund will recognise that request, identify that that balance is unknown, and then notify that member of the unknown balance and naturally issue the PDS at that point in time. Now, when the financials are completed, or there's a purchase price that may be determined using the valuation guidelines that would obviously satisfy for the requirements of reporting that pension for TBAR purposes, there would be a formal notification of the pension commencement at that point in time. So it's a two-step process that will enable for the commencement of the income stream. And then what would naturally follow is for you to look at that TBAR reporting requirement. So we do have some guidance that sits within 2013/5 around the fact that we will need to evidence the where a pension is starting, and therefore we don't want to, or we can't in essence be backdating that particular process. So you can see that on the left-hand side there. And as I touched on before, we must have the trustees and members agreeing to the terms and conditions before that pension can be met. So how do we evidence that? As I said before, what we now have in our pension documents, still will exist as it's going forward, is at the bottom there you can see, I hereby confirm my previous oral request to commence an income stream at that point in time. Okay, so again, there's little nuances you'll start to see in these documents that become critically important in terms of their operation, both from a compliance point of view, but also strategically as we work through today's slides. The other thing, and I'm scooting through this because I do want to make sure we get on to the forms and have a look at this as well. Payment discretion is something that we haven't really seen a lot talked about, but is something that is critical in the context of not only the tax ruling around when a pension commences and ceases, but the guidance that the ATO actually has on their website as well. Because the other thing that I want to challenge you on is do your pension documents provide for discretion in dealing with the benefit payments? And in reality, the SMSF pension documents from your software may not provide that flexibility to allocate from one pension to another, either with a member or between members. And if we don't have that flexibility, then the pension standards won't be met. So if it's monthly and you notify that it's monthly, then there is an obligation to actually have to meet the requirements of the rules that are set out in respect to that pension. So if the minimum pension is $40,000 and you set the minimum pension, you set the pension payments to $5,000 a month, there is an obligation to meet the pension standards, the conditions of that pension, to continue to pay $5,000 a month. You cannot assign, technically, you cannot assign $5,000 of that off into another income stream because there was a shortfall on the other example. And I give you this reference straight off the ATO website that talks about this particular issue. So the example you can see here, one member receives two pensions and the trustee does not satisfy the minimum payment for one pension, but does for the other. So I've got member A currently in receipt of two pensions. The member has withdrawn an amount well in excess of the minimum from pension one, but failed to meet the minimum required from pension two. The trustee must ensure that each pension meets the minimum payment requirements. It is irrelevant that the combined income received from member A from the two pensions equates to an amount greater than the combined pension payments required. Subject to satisfying all the conditions, the trustee may be able to comply concession around any sort of minimum shortfall where there would be discretion to potentially do so despite that underpayment. So again, what we do within our pension documents, as you can see in the bottom here, is we deliberately set out the fact that pension payments will be made at the trustee's discretion. So there's an obligation to pay a minimum payment for that year, but we don't want to nominate an amount. Yes, there's an obligation to pay at least the minimum because that's what the statutory obligation is. And it gives us the strategic flexibility as well to deal with payments that we might take that go above and beyond what that minimum would be for the year. So we capture a lot of this inside our pension documents. And the pension documents are then linked by what we call as a special rule of the fund, something unique to our Smarter SMSF deed. You can see there in Rule 1.8, because what we are doing by making the pension documents a special rule of the fund is we are in essence annexing that as if it was a clause inside the SMSF trust deed. We have an agreement between the member and the trustee, which means if we want to make changes to that in the future, we can do so without having to stop that superannuation income stream as well. So again, this is a critical step inside the pension documents, and we do ask this, whether you are using the Smarter SMSF deed, and therefore it will incorporate some of this additional information in the resolutions that ultimately get prepared. So what are some of the other gaps that we can see? Well, there's a few in here that we can see that we've tried to overcome in our own pension documents. Now, yes, there is an ability to simply choose a reversionary beneficiary, but as is the case we're seeing more strategically these days, given the transfer balance cap, you may want to specify the level of reversion. So that level of reversion may be by percentage, it may be by dollar amount, it may be to an individual's transfer balance cap. So again, what level of detail can you have that would include this, and how does then this, of course, link back to the broader estate planning? What asset segregation is allowed and provided for to support the payment of the income stream? What are the strategy considerations? If we go to our bottom left, what we have done as part of the pension commencement, rather than as multiple forms, you will enable that member to say, well, yeah, there'll be a minimum pension, but if I take more than the minimum, can we elect to maybe treat those abouts above the minimum in a different way? Can we elect to take them from an accumulation account? Can we elect to treat it as a partial commutation? And given the changes that we've seen from the 1st of July 2022, we may want to look at and re-rank the priorities of those different benefit payments as well. So the discretion that you have around that. And the reason why this is critically important is because of the fact that any decision for commutation purposes must be prospective. And if you fail to do that prospectively, then you will fail to have that treated as a commutation, which therefore means you would not get that debit for transfer balance cap purposes. And the last thing is just around signing capability or capacity. So how the fund is dealing with pension documents where a pension member is unable to sign. So what we have been looking to do now, we do regularly, or more regularly is probably the right word, not regularly, but more regularly now, we get members who are drawing retirement phase income streams from their SMSF, but they now have lost capacity, maybe a child, it may be a spouse or someone that, or multiple people that need to sign on behalf of that member. So again, making some changes in respect to the way in which that documentation can be provided. So let's go in now and have a look at our Smarter SMSF pension documents, because there's a few things that we're going to go through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I'll share this with you and you can have a look through, but we're going to go through each of these different things in here to help you understand, not only from the order form point of view, but then obviously around the linking to the deed and the fact that you can then add in or choose to exclude, subject to whether you use our deed or not, things like that special rule of the fund and our concept of a paramount document. So let's jump across to our pension commencement form. So this, many of you that already use our pension commencement form, we have in essence taken that existing form and tried to put it on steroids. So a few things that I just want to talk about here that will become really important in this process. So first and foremost is I've started to populate some of this already. There will be naturally the integrations that you will be able to use, whether you use BGL, whether you use Class, and we are about to start some work with Supermate in respect to the integration as well. One of the things that we are also working on at the moment is a revised version of our document templates, our platform, I should say, And what you will see in our revised dashboard here is the fact that the integration for Simple Fund 360 and Class, and then obviously SuperMate, will actually sit within the document order itself. So you're not going to have to go to different areas to be able to do that integration. So we are working on those at the moment, and we will provide more information in respect to that shortly. And that will be a feature in every form that sits there. Of course, for BGL users, you can either do it within here, or you can use our direct document platform that we have inside Simple Fund 360. So as we go through this form, a couple of, I guess, tips always that you can, as this information comes in, you can then automatically link the address. We have our trustee information. Once we link that address, it will appear in a drop menu for you. So we have Jeff's slush fund here, and we have our 2 directors. So the first thing I wanted to include and show you here that is a change is the fact that we now ask, is the member starting the pension a trustee or director? So across these, we have tooltips. So this question is designed to assist in determining whether the person receiving the income stream is under a legal disability and requires an enduring power of attorney to act as trustee on their behalf. So if that person is not a director, then what we are doing is we are putting in the member that is obviously going to be the one receiving the income stream. So they have previously been removed. They are no longer capable to run as a director or an individual trustee. So we would be then including, that individual's name in here. So if we call it Tom Slushy, so you'll then see the fact that when we produce these documents, Tom will be there rather than rather than Jeff, I should say. Now, if we have the existing, so if Jeff is that director, then quite clearly we're going to have a drop menu that will choose those different parties. So I might just go back and we'll put Tom in again for a second. You can see down here what we're doing is we're grabbing their date of birth information and so forth, but we're then asking who are and how many people are to sign on behalf of that individual. And we've got a couple of checks and balances in here, because you are only going to be able to choose from a maximum. It won't let you choose 3, but it will let you choose 1. And again, it will only let you choose from the people that are listed above. If we tried to choose 2, then of course we can choose those individuals. It won't let us go beyond, in essence, 3, because we don't actually have any more that would allow us to do so. Okay, so again, just a few little features in there now that we've added that will enable you, if you have someone that has incapacity or is not able to, by virtue of the operation of 17A subsection 3, then we can actually incorporate that information in there. So I'm going to just go back and pick Jeff, and then we will go through to our next page. So that is feature number 1 that we have now added. The other things that you'll see shortly, once this loads up, is we now have the ability for you to start pensions based upon whether the fund has a balance to determine the purchase price or not. So you can see here whether the fund does or doesn't use the Smarter SMSF deed. That is going to determine the templates that get generated and those things around the special rule and empowerment document that we spoke about. So I'm just going to include yes for that. We also note inside these pension documents, it will allow you to generate either account-based pensions, transition to retirement income streams, or death benefit pensions. So we've got a range of conditions embedded into this document that will enable you to get the output based upon the conditions that you include in here. So if it is a death benefit, who the deceased is, the relationship, how old they were, a range of things there that will dictate the death benefit documents that will get produced. If it's no, then we would naturally be putting in here our pension commencement date, 9/2022, let's say. And we can see here, we have a commencement age that is already calculated, which gives us the condition of release that has been met, and therefore will default to account-based pensions, knowing that a transition to retirement income stream cannot be paid once the age 65 has been done. Now, do we want to assign this a name? You might be starting multiple pensions for the client. So they might already have account-based pension, an ABP1, an ABP2 or something. So you can now give that a name. And the final question here is, do you know whether there is an account balance that is known or not? So this is the big shift. So what we see here is the account balance known? We would have, if we answer no, then we are asking here the financial statements to be completed, say to the year 2022. And we ask then, will the pension start with the member's entire accumulation interest, with an amount up to their transfer balance cap, or with a specified amount? So if you know the specified amount, then obviously you're going to be including that. If you're doing it with the entire interest, quite clearly you're going to have to do the entire financial statements of the fund to be able to prepare those pension documents. So if you answer simply with the information and balance not yet known, there are a couple of final questions that will get asked, and then it will produce the what we call our two-step pension process. And phase and stage one will be actually just producing the initial set in respect to the income stream. So we've got here, we know that they want to actually get some payments running. So we spoke before about the formulating maybe different timeframes, or whether we leave that to the discretion of the trustee. And then we go into reversionary and segregation, which I'll come back to shortly. So what I want to do here is just show you a couple of quick things. So first and foremost, so we now have, just got to get it right. Yes, I think this is the one here. So this is the documents that will get prepared based upon the balance that is not yet known around that income stream. So you can see here, I hereby request to commence an account-based pension to be determined upon the finalisation of the fund's statutory obligations of the 30th of June 2022. I confirm at commencement date, we qualify for a retirement income stream to be in retirement phase, met the condition of release and so forth. Request at least minimum payment with trustee discretion. All of those other things, I guess, that we would ordinarily see in our standard documentation. So we have in here our oral request and commencement and so forth. A lot of that stuff will still exist in this initial document. We then have our trustee resolution here that enables that there was an initial written request, noting the differences. Again, if we go back here, the initial oral request, and the fact that we are commencing that income stream, the powers to pay, the fact that we need to consider the investment strategy, the notification, and the steps that would need to occur with that. We again have the acknowledgement and the fact that there'll be further work to be done upon finalisation of that income stream. What we've also got is the issuing of the PDS, as we spoke about before. So they're kind of the key bits to the first step that would be done. Now, critically, when you actually lodge that in that particular way at that point in time, what we are also doing is, upon submission, we are going to also create a saved file order for you, so that once you do know the balance, you will be able to pick up that form and, in essence, create the information or finish off that document, I guess, change it from yes, the balance not being known, to the balance actually being known. So we were going to go down the path of multiple forms. The feedback that we got from our members, no, if you can pretty much store that entry that was there previously, we can then go in and actually finish off the rest of that pension form. So i.e., that's what we're going to do there from a commencement perspective, where that balance is unknown. So I'm going to go back here, and then, of course, if the balance is then known, we would be hitting yes. Was an initial written request provided? So if it was yes, then you'll be able to link that back. So you'll be able to assign the particular date to that request. So it may have been done on the 1st of September that we said, and it links to the financial statements that are completed to June 2022. So again, a similar approach. I'm just going to close some of these off. So what we end up with here is an initial written request was done, and we can link that particular date. We've finished the statutory obligations, and we're now hereby confirming the purchase price of the conditions that we didn't have confirmed previously, the powers to pay, the commencement, the components, all those things that we spoke about a little bit earlier on. And then, of course, the notification that goes back to the member at that point in time. So we've got member request initially to trustee, trustee acknowledges back to member with an unknown balance. Accounts get done. Trustees then prepare the rest of the documents confirming the fact that that pension will start, and then notifies the member in respect to the operation of that income stream, and would get them obviously to acknowledge that as well. Now, let's keep moving through this form. I'm just going to keep closing these down as we go through, because we do ask, and I'm just going to maybe put a figure in these just for simplicity. Because what we've also done is we've asked whether the member is intending on taking amounts that may be above the minimum for the year. So we've built some additional conditions now into these documents as well that enable you to look at whether you might be employing any strategic opportunities with your clients as well. So we've got things like the reduced minimum, the amount that needs to get calculated. If we're taking at least the minimum payment, we've now got some decisions in here about whether you want to look at treating those amounts above the minimum. So if we are going to make the election, we've got some ways in which we might be prioritizing these as well. So are we dealing only with commutations? Are we dealing with lump sums? And which way do we want to be employing those to ensure that we, again, comply with the law? So we might do a commutation, and then we would have to look at the rule number that would allow for that commutation to occur. So we have frequency at the trustee's discretion. And the final thing that I just wanted to show you was around the reversionary requirements as well. So there's a lot of, I guess, intel that's gone into this form to try and help you understand all of the ever-growing elements that form part of formulating a pension for a client. So does the member want to nominate? If yes, and now the big change is we've got percentages, we've got dollar amounts, we've got transfer balance caps. Okay, so you can start to see what those percentages are, what those dollar amounts are, and go from there. So when you get to the stage of the elections that are being made before, you can see here that in addition to the pension documents and the notification, then what we are also incorporating into here is the election that's being made and the priorities that are then to follow. So the election by the member, the acknowledgement by the trustee in respect to that process, and then of course the notification acknowledging that different approach as well. So they're all of the different elements, and the reversionary information will naturally sit in here and include the percentages and those other allocations. So that is the process. They are the changes, like I said, that we had. All of the other features, I guess, that existed previously still remain. We've added and we've kept all that information in there, and we've just, I guess, enhanced this further. And I guess to our members, a special thank you to obviously giving us a lot of this feedback and information that we can naturally incorporate into here as well. So I'm going to bore you with, I guess, all the rest of that submission. I've kind of showed you how the rest of that works. So a couple of things here. So we are continuing to make a range of additional documents that will obviously form part of the whole pension process. Okay, so you can see here there's a huge amount of pension related documents that we have to be able to support you throughout this process. So if you haven't seen these or you want to find out a bit more, you can obviously talk to David. We always get questions about all the legacy pension conversions. There's nothing at this stage. If there is stuff that comes out, then naturally we're going to do a little bit of documentation in that space around templates to be able to support you through that process too. There is a question here. Corinna's asked, in terms of the unlicensed accountant letters, yes, these will also be reflected and updated around the fact that you'll be able to utilize and look at those. And I've actually got that on that screen, so I might go to that first. We are also rolling out this approach, not only with the written requests for our pension commencements, we are also doing it in the context of rollbacks and commutations. We're working through that updates to the above minimum pension elections, as we sort of showed you, and the ranking of priorities, and the updates and additions to the accountant licensing letters. So the rollout, we're actually introducing a superstream rollover one as well, and actually building it in to the existing document ordering process there. So there's a lot, I guess, that continues to evolve around those as well. Of course, we have our document packages if you want to find out a little bit more in respect to those items. The other thing that I do quickly want to touch on here is just around the fact that we have many of our members, of course, now utilizing subscriptions that actually have the multiple staff using that subscription. And what we now have built here is the ability for you to track what users you want to have access to that subscription. You'll be able to invite the users that you can see here. So email address, first name, last name, you'll be able to invite that particular user to be able to order documents under that subscription. But also you will be able to see both the saved orders that each person has done and the completed orders that each of the people have done. So this will be something unique to what we call the parent. So if we've had examples whereby someone in an organization has completed a particular document under their profile, they've gone on holidays, and of course the document needs to be found. There is an ability to then obviously go into that individual's completed orders there. You'll be able to click on their name, and then you'll be able to find that link to be able to download that particular order. Equally, from a saved order point of view, you may actually have staff that do the preparation of particular documents. And this is not only relevant to, I'm just wondering if this is crashing because I've got Zoom open, but you might have clients that, staff that may produce it to a review stage. So rather than submitting that information, what they will be able to do is produce it to a particular point. Just trying to find one here. There you go. And then what the manager can then do is obviously pick up that incomplete order, review it, and then submit it there themselves. So a couple of little things, like I said, that we're working on that's being built into the platform that is giving, I guess, multi-access to the document subscription across the firm. And you'll get a bit more information around the reporting and what document orders are being done as well. So plenty, I guess, going on from that perspective. Yeah, and I think just on the right-hand side there, we're doing a little bit of work as well from a document workflow point of view. So look out for that, where you'll be able to obviously build your own workflows around different documents, maybe a recontribution strategy, pension reboot, or utilize some of our pre-built document workflows that we'll be incorporating into that as well. So there's a huge range of things that we are kind of working on as we speak. First and foremost, I guess, from today's session, happy to take any other questions that we have here. I guess, most importantly, make sure your pension documents are appropriately aligned to the fund's governing rules. Make sure you're also getting your pension document right to avoid any potential challenge. That income stream was established and therefore managed correctly. Look to take advantage of those strategic opportunities that may present as well, and leverage the ability to create using the integrations without necessarily compromising on the quality, but still leverage those integrations to save you time in that process. So I guess, where are we with these documents? There was a question here about the samples. We will be uploading those samples in the not too distant future. We are about to move to beta testing phase with our members. We have approached a couple of members. For those of you that have membership with us, subscription memberships for our documents, if you would like to be involved in this process, more than happy to arrange for you to give us some feedback. But we are expecting to have these documents available. I'm saying mid-October. I'm hoping it may be before. We will probably roll them out without the integration first, at least for beta testing, get the integrations wrapped up. And then obviously by middle of October, we hope to have that all ready to go. Of course, for those that still use our existing pension documents, nothing changes. We will be advising you at the appropriate time when we are migrating off one document form into the new document form, and you'll have sufficient warning in respect to that. And again, we'll be going through a fairly thorough testing process over the next few weeks to ensure that that is all working and lined up as expected. So again, thank you. From that point of view, I guess in terms of what else is coming up. One thing to note, if you do want to find out more about some of these projects that we're working on, the 19th of October, we are now going to be running a quarterly Smarter SMSF update. So it's an opportunity for you to kind of hear about what we're working on. So our pension document is just one of many projects that our team are frantically working through. And this is an opportunity for us to share that information with you. So if you do want to find out more, go on to our events page, smartersmsf.com/events, and register yourself for that particular session. We are getting on the road from next week for the SMSF Advisor Technical Strategy Days. I am emceeing and also presenting, so hopefully we'll see you at those events in either Melbourne, Sydney, or Brisbane. And of course, we have our federal budget next month as well, so something to keep your eye out for. And again, you'll be able to register on our event page to join us for that particular session. So that is all from me. Thank you once again for being a part of today's session. We will have a look at some other questions here. Other than that, yeah, like I said, we will keep you well informed in respect to where and when we will have these pension documents available for you. Wanted to give you a bit of a taste as to what you could be expecting, and again, answer a lot of the questions about what type of pension documents you should be using and looking out for, and those tips and traps that potentially may be relevant to you and your business, so that you can have a think about what may be appropriate inside your practice and to be able to support you through your business through Smarter SMSF. So thank you once again. We will take some questions now. Feel free to hang around. Otherwise, we'll catch you soon. Bye for now.